My marriage to Mark didn't fall apart. It dissolved, like a photograph left in the sun, the colors and details slowly bleaching into an unrecognizable white. The first time it happened, I dismissed it as a simple misunderstanding. We were supposed to go to a dinner party at our friend's house. I had the date circled on our kitchen calendar, a big, bright red circle. When the day came, I was getting ready, when Mark walked in, asking me what I was doing. "It's the Hendersons' party tonight," I said, zipping up my dress. He looked at me with a genuinely baffled expression. "No, it's not," he said. "That's next Saturday. We talked about it this morning." I stared at him, confused. "No, we didn't. And I'm sure it's tonight." I pointed to the calendar. "Look." He walked over, glanced at it, and then looked back at me with a soft, pitying smile. "Honey, you must have written it on the wrong week. We literally just discussed this over coffee. Don't you remember?" His certainty was a physical force. It was so absolute, so unwavering, that it made my own memory feel flimsy and thin. I started to second-guess myself. Had we talked about it? Was I so stressed at work that I was forgetting entire conversations? I ended up calling our friends, stammering a lame excuse, my face burning with embarrassment. They confirmed it was, in fact, that night. When I told Mark, he just shook his head. "Wow," he said, his voice full of concern. "They must have told you the wrong date. You really need to get more sleep, babe. Your memory is shot." That was the first drop of poison. After that, it was a slow, steady drip. Conversations I was sure we'd had were erased from history. I never said I would pick up the dry cleaning. I would never agree to that vacation. You know I hate the beach. I absolutely did not call your mother overbearing. Why would you make something like that up? Each denial was delivered with the same calm, unshakable conviction. He wasn't angry. He was confused, concerned for me. He was the patient, rational man dealing with an increasingly forgetful and emotional life. My world began to feel unstable, like walking on shifting sand. I started writing everything down in a notebook. Promises he made, decisions we agreed upon, just to keep my own timeline straight. But he had an answer for that, too. I'd show him the notebook, a page where I'd written, "Mark agreed to co-sign the car loan on Tuesday." He'd look at it, then at me, his eyes full of a deep, sorrowful disappointment. "I know you believe that's what happened, but you're hearing what you want to hear. You've been under so much pressure. Sometimes the mind creates its own reality to cope." He was a master of psychological jujitsu. He would use my own love for him, my own trust in him as leverage to throw me off balance. I started to believe him. I began to see myself through his eyes, a fragile, unreliable narrator of my own life. I became quiet, hesitant, constantly second-guessing my own perceptions. The house was filled with a strange, humming silence, the silence of 1,000 unprovable truths and a million unspoken doubts. He was chipping away at my sanity, piece by piece, and I was letting him. I was handing him the chisel every single day. The turning point wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a slow, dawning horror, a realization that crept up on me over weeks. I started to notice a pattern. His memory was only faulty when it came to things that held him accountable. He never forgot a sports score, a detail from a movie we'd watched, or an appointment that he wanted to keep. He only ever forgot the promises he had made to me. He only ever denied the conversations where he had been in the wrong. His amnesia was surgically precise. The final clarifying moment came over something laughably small. I had asked him to pick up a specific brand of coffee from the store. He came home with the wrong one. When I pointed it out, he launched into the familiar script. "You absolutely did not tell me that brand. I would have remembered. You just said coffee." But this time, something was different. I had texted him the request. It was there, in my phone, in black and white, a small, undeniable piece of objective reality. I showed him the phone. "Look, Mark, I texted you." He glanced at the screen, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than concern in his eyes. It was anger, A flash of pure, hot fury, like a predator whose prey had unexpectedly fought back. It was gone in a second, replaced by his usual calm. He scoffed. You must have sent that after I left the store. You're trying to trick me to win an argument. This is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about. It's not healthy, Clara. But I had seen it. I had seen the rage behind the mask. He wasn't confused. He wasn't concerned. He knew exactly what he was doing. It was a game, a sick, twisted game designed to make me feel so small, so crazy, so utterly dependent on his version of reality that I would never have the confidence to challenge him, to disagree with him, to leave him. He wasn't just my husband, he was my captor, and the prison was my own mind. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the darkness, listening to his steady breathing, and a new kind of resolve took root in my soul. I was not crazy. My memory was fine, and I was going to prove it, not to him, but to myself. The next day, I went out and bought a tiny, voice-activated audio recorder. If he was going to erase my reality, I was going to start making a backup copy. Living with the recorder was like living with a secret second heartbeat. It was a constant thrum of fear and validation just beneath the surface of my skin. I kept it in my pocket, a small, cold piece of metal that felt like a lifeline. I'd turn it on whenever we started a conversation that I knew had the potential to be erased. We'd talk about weekend plans, finances, whose turn it was to do a chore. Normal, mundane conversations. But now, they were evidence. The first time I caught a lie, it was almost an out-of-body experience. We had a long discussion about our summer vacation. We agreed to visit the lake house my parents owned, specifically on the first week of July. I had the entire conversation recorded. A week later, I brought it up, asking if he'd put in the time off at work. He gave me that familiar, baffled look. The lake house? We never decided on that. I told you I wanted to go to the mountains. We had a whole conversation about it last Tuesday. You were the one who suggested the hiking trails. Are you feeling okay? My old self would have crumbled. I would have descended into a spiral of self-doubt, frantically trying to piece together a conversation that never happened. But this time, I just nodded. You're right, I said quietly. I must have forgotten. The ease with which the lie came to my own lips was chilling. I had to become a liar just to survive his. That night, I went to my car, plugged in my earbuds, and listened to the recording. I heard my own voice, clear and rational, suggesting the lake house. I heard his voice, equally clear, agreeing. Yeah, the lake sounds great. The first week of July is perfect. Listening to it was a nauseating, head-spinning experience. It was the sound of my own sanity. It was the sound of his profound, casual cruelty. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick. My life became a bizarre double-entry bookkeeping of reality. There was the world as it happened, and then there was the world as Mark described it. My recordings were the ledger, the only thing that kept me from being driven into psychological bankruptcy. The more I recorded, the more I realized how pervasive the gaslighting was. It wasn't just about big decisions, it was about everything. He would deny telling me he liked my new dress. He would deny that he was the one who left the milk out. Tiny, insignificant lies, each one another small chisel chipping away at the foundations of my reality. He was an artist, and his medium was my mind. The constant vigilance was exhausting. I was always on edge, my hand hovering in my pocket, ready to press record. The secrecy was a heavy cloak. He started to notice my change in behavior, of course. I was quieter, more watchful, and he, being the master manipulator he was, used it against me. You seem so paranoid lately. You're always jumpy. You never seem present. I'm really starting to worry about your mental state. He was diagnosing the symptoms of his own abuse. I knew I couldn't live like this forever, a secret archivist in my own home. The recordings had served their purpose. They had anchored me to reality. They had proven to me that I was not crazy. But now what? What do you do when you have undeniable proof that the person you share your life with is a liar who is actively trying to make you insane? A direct confrontation felt dangerous. He wasn't just a liar, he was a controller. The lies were a tool to maintain his power. If I took that tool away, how would he react?
The flash of rage I had seen over the coffee text was a warning.
I decided I needed one final, undeniable piece of evidence, something so significant, so irrefutable, that it would be impossible for him to twist or deny. I needed to catch him in a lie that had real-world consequences, a lie that could be verified by a third party. The opportunity came in the form of a call from his mother. She was having a milestone birthday, and his siblings were planning a large, expensive surprise party for her. His sister, Kate, called me to coordinate. The plan was for all the siblings to split the cost of the venue, a $5,000 expense, meaning each of them would have to contribute a significant amount. I told Kate I would discuss it with Mark and get back to her. That night, I sat down with him. I turned on the recorder in my pocket. I laid out the plan. I told him the cost. I watched his face. He was enthusiastic. "Of course," he said. "We have to. It's Mom's birthday. We're in, 100%. Tell Kate we'll transfer our share next week." It was a long, detailed conversation. We talked about the gift, the travel arrangements, everything. It was all on the recording. A week passed. Kate called me again, her voice strained. "Hey," she said. "Just checking in. I haven't received the transfer from you guys yet, and the venue needs the deposit." I assured her it was coming. That night, I gently reminded Mark about the money. He looked up from his laptop, a complete blank. "What money?" he asked. "For your mom's party," I said, my heart starting to beat a little faster. "Our share for the venue. We talked about it last week." He stared at me, and then he let out a short, condescending laugh. "Honey, no, we absolutely did not. I would never, ever agree to spend that kind of money on a party. You know how I feel about that. I told you I would send flowers." "Are you serious? Did you tell Kate we were going to give her money?" The lie was breathtaking in its audacity. He wasn't just denying a private conversation. He was about to blow up a major family event and make me the scapegoat. He was going to let his sister, his entire family, believe that I had either lied to them or was mentally incompetent, that I had invented a promise of thousands of dollars. This was it. This was the moment. "Mark, you and I both know we had that conversation. I am not going to let you make me out to be a liar to your entire family." He stood up, his face hardening. The mask of concern was gone. "I don't know what's wrong with you," he said, his voice low and menacing, "but you need to call Kate and you need to fix this. You need to tell her you were confused, that you misunderstood, because if you make me look bad to my family, you will regret it." I looked at him, at this man who was willing to burn everything to the ground just to win his sick little game, and I wasn't scared anymore. I was just done. "No," I said. "I don't think I will do that." I reached into my pocket, took out the small digital recorder, and placed it on the coffee table between us. I pressed play. His voice filled the room, clear and confident. "We're in, 100%. Tell Kate we'll transfer our share next week." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. He stared at the small black device as if it were a bomb. The color drained from his face, leaving a pale, waxy sheen. He looked from the recorder to me, and the look in his eyes was not of remorse or shame. It was a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. It was the look of a king whose castle had just been stormed, of a god whose worshippers had just discovered he was a fraud. He had lost control. And in that moment, I knew that the man I had married was a stranger, and I was in a room with an enemy. The game was over, and a new, more dangerous one was about to begin. The mask didn't just drop, it shattered. The calm, concerned husband was gone, replaced by a stranger with cold, dead eyes. "How long?" he hissed, his voice a low, terrifying growl. He was looking at the recorder, not at me. "How long have you been doing that?" "Long enough," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I stood up and backed away towards the kitchen, putting the island between us. I had never been physically afraid of him before, but the raw fury radiating from him was a tangible force. This was a man who had lost absolute control, and I had no idea what he was capable of. "You are sick," he said, taking a step towards me, "spying on me in my own home. What kind of twisted, paranoid person does that?"
The kind of person who was being systematically driven crazy. The kind of person who needed to prove to herself that her own memory wasn't broken. "Delete it," he said. It wasn't a request. It was an order. "Delete all of them, now." "No," I said. "These recordings are the only thing that's real in this house anymore, and I'm not letting them go." He lunged for the recorder on the coffee table, but I was faster. I scooped it up and held it behind my back. He stopped, his chest heaving. We stood there, locked in a silent standoff in the middle of our beautifully decorated living room, a room that had been the stage for so many of his sick plays. I saw the truth then. The gaslighting wasn't just a tool for control, it was his entire reality. He had told the lies so often and for so long that he had come to believe them himself. My recordings weren't just a threat to his power, they were a threat to his very identity. I knew I had to get out. Not just for a night, but for good. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I locked myself in the guest room, a chair wedged under the doorknob. I spent the night transferring every single audio file from the recorder to my laptop, then uploading them to a secure cloud server, emailing a password-protected link to my sister and my best friend, with the subject line, "If you don't hear from me by tomorrow at noon, open this and call the police." It felt melodramatic, but the look in his eyes had terrified me. The next morning, the house was silent. He had already left for work, not saying a word. The silence was a relief, but it was also unnerving. I packed a bag, my hands shaking. I took my laptop, my passport, and the most important thing, the original audio recorder. I drove straight to a lawyer's office, a referral I had gotten from a friend months ago, but had been too scared to call. I sat in front of a sharp, intelligent woman, and I told her everything. I felt like I was recounting a plot from a thriller, not my own marriage. When I was done, I took out the recorder. "I have proof," I said. I played her the final recording, the one about his mother's party. She listened, her expression unreadable. Then I played her one of the earlier ones, a mundane conversation about what to have for dinner that he had later denied ever happened. I wanted her to understand the scope of it, the constant, soul-crushing nature of the abuse. When I was done, she was silent for a full minute. "This is one of the most severe cases of psychological abuse I have ever encountered," she said, her voice firm. "Gaslighting is a term that gets thrown around a lot these days. What you have here, documented, is a textbook, malicious, and prolonged campaign to intentionally destroy your perception of reality. These recordings are everything." She laid out a plan. It was a plan for an escape, not just a divorce. She told me to go somewhere safe, somewhere he couldn't find me. She would file for divorce and a restraining order, using the recordings as primary evidence. "He will fight this," she warned me. "He will not go quietly. He will try to paint you as the unstable one, the spy, but he won't be able to argue with his own voice." I spent the next 2 weeks at my sister's house, living in a strange state of suspended animation. My phone was a constant barrage of texts and calls from him. The tone had shifted again. He was no longer angry. He was the victim, the heartbroken husband whose crazy wife had abandoned him after a misunderstanding. He sent long, rambling emails, rewriting our entire history, painting a picture of a loving marriage destroyed by my paranoia. He was gaslighting me from a distance, but it didn't work anymore. I had the recordings. I had my own, unshakable reality to cling to. When he was served with the divorce papers and the restraining order, the real war began. Just as the lawyer predicted, he tried to flip the script. His legal response claimed that I was the abuser, that I had a history of mental instability, and that I had illegally recorded him in a pathetic attempt to create a false narrative. He was trying to put me on trial for the crime of saving my own sanity. But his voice was his undoing. In the preliminary hearing, my lawyer played a single 1-minute clip of the recording about his mother's party. The judge listened to him agree to the plan, and then listened to him in a subsequent recording furiously deny it to my face. The judge then looked at the stack of sworn affidavits from his own family members, including his sister Kate, who confirmed he had lied to them all and nearly ruined his mother's birthday. It was over. The judge saw through the performance. The restraining order was made permanent, the divorce proceeded, and the recordings made any argument he had about assets or alimony completely moot. He was exposed, not in a dramatic party scene, but in the cold, sterile light of a courtroom. And his own words were his executioner. I never spoke to him again. The man I had married was an illusion, a carefully constructed character. The real man was a stranger, a hollow man so terrified of his own inadequacy that he had to destroy someone else's reality to feel real himself. The healing process was long and strange. For months, I found myself compulsively checking my memories, as if cross-referencing them against an internal database. Was I remembering that conversation correctly? Did that event really happen that way? The echoes of his gaslighting were persistent, but slowly, with time and therapy, I began to trust the sound of my own mind again. I learned that the recordings had been more than just evidence for a court case. They had been a bridge that allowed me to walk from his twisted, fabricated reality back to my own. I don't need a recorder anymore. My memory is my own. My reality is my own. The silence in my new apartment isn't the silence of doubt. It's the silence of peace. He tried to erase me, to overwrite my life with his fiction, but he failed, because a copy of the truth always exists, and I had fought like hell to make sure mine survived.